Olá, pessoal, boa tarde mais uma vez. Vamos aqui de novo, agora com mais uma conferência internacional com o professor Andrés Saab, de Buenos Aires, que também mostra mais uma conexão importante dos nossos homenageados. Então, Andrés, muchísimas gracias por haber aceptado a invitación de participar en ese homenaje. Jairo fue tu director de tesis y es un gusto recibirte para que puedas hablar un poquito para nosotros en este homenaje. Bueno, y este homenaje es muy interesante porque es un homenaje, es un evento plurilingüe, ¿no? Estamos hablando así en muchas lenguas a la vez, se pasa del portugués al inglés, al español, y eso es muy, muy interesante. Muchísimas gracias, Andrés, y te doy la palabra para que puedas dar tu charla.
Gracias, Carlos. Bueno, ¿se escucha bien ahí? Bien. Ok, yo voy a hablar en inglés, la charla la voy a dar en inglés, pero bueno, quiero primero en mi lengua felicitar y parabenizar, como dicen en portugués, a Ruth López y Jairo Núñez por este más que merecido encuentro de gramática generativa. Son dos personas muy respetadas y muy queridas en el ambiente. Y acá hablo en nombre de muchos colegas y amigos míos de Argentina. Estamos más que felices de poder darles también este abrazo en homenaje. Bueno, yo voy en particular, por lo que decía Carlos Felipe, Jairo Núñez fue mi director de tesis, es un gran amigo y por eso en particular quiero dedicarle esta charla a mi querido Jairo, ¿sí? No sé si se ven los slides cuando pasan ahí o no pasan. Carlos, ¿pasan bien los slides?
Sí, se pasa.
Ok. Entonces, como decía, quiero dedicarle esta charla a Jairo, a quien yo prácticamente le debo toda mi carrera. Ha sido una persona fundamental en mi vida por muchas razones, algunas de las cuales son estrictamente profesionales. Jairo es un lingüista de excepción, probablemente de los más brillantes de los últimos 30, 40 años. Pero además para mí ha sido un gran maestro, un gran formador, y demostró que se puede ser maestro a la distancia también. Así que me cuesta mucho, como dice ahí, hablar de Jairo sin emocionarme. Entonces, como esta charla va a estar cargada de emoción, voy a hablar sobre lenguaje y emociones. Y ahí tengo una foto muy linda que tiene Jairo con mi hijo Julián, el más pequeño, con la remera de Brasil que usaba Rubinho hace ya unos cuantos años. Bueno, tengo un montón de slides, los voy a pasar por alto algunos por cuestiones de tiempo, porque estamos todos cansados, y voy a tratar de iluminar el punto central de la charla, ¿ok? So, okay, I will try to speak some English here, and I will start talking about what I call here the representation first conjecture, which is a conjecture that basically dominated the linguistic and philosophical tradition, and essentially says that language is mainly a representational system for reasoning and thinking, okay? The idea is, as I said, has a large tradition, both in the scholastic philosophical tradition and also in linguistics. Here there is a very, very clear quotation from Post, taken from Corber, 2016, in which he says, I believe that in order to understand the emotive dimension in a linguistic perspective, one has to base oneself on language conceived as an instrument for reasoning. On this basis, affective meaning would appear to be a complication of rational language. Recently, Corber, in a very lucid work, has a particular implementation of this representation first conjecture. Concretely, he assumes in a similar way to what I did here, I will do here, that emotion is read by the appraisal system through information available or deduced from the PF interface, crucially not from LF. Yet, for Corber, the grammar of emotion expressivity, taking as a starting point the above quotation from Post, requires deviation of rule of grammar in at least 3 different ways. Grammar can be deviated in a syntactic way, what he calls space-based indexation. That is to say, a symbol, a functional category, indexes high amount of information, a high distinguishability if it is in a deviant marked position in a linguistic representation. So there is a way in which affecting the rules of grammar, concretely rules of syntax, gives you expressivity, emotional language. Okay? Then you can have also what he called symbol-based indexation, which is basically manipulation of linguistic terms. And finally, what he called indexation by duplication, which refer to the fact that you can get emotion by just spreading out a linguistic expression across a phrase, for instance. Then you have some examples of each type from Dutch, and I will particularly be concerned today with the space-based indexation, the most interesting without a doubt, which is the case we have in 1A according to Corben, in which you can see that a singular article, ein, is combined with a plural noun, with boeken. Okay, so a boeken is a paradigmatic case of a space-based indexation according to Corben. The construction I will concern during this talk are cases that can be analyzed in terms of deviation of syntax in Corben terms. And these refer to the following expressive nominals. El idiota de Andrés, that epithet of DP is the scheme. A sheet of an apartment, una mierda de departamento, in which you have a mixed expressive like sheet, and then you have a bare nominal like department, an NP as a coda. And then finally, a construction which was almost not analyzed in previous literature, which basically consists of a demonstrative or a complex demonstrative with expressive terms like boludez, which in Spanish means bullshit, and a coda, which in this case is a CP. So what you see here is DP preceded by the of, RMP, or a CP. And the nominal, the first nominal is always an expressive term, okay? This is in Dutch, the correlate, for instance, of 1B is also taken for Corben as cases of syntactic deviation. Okay. So I will proceed in two basic steps. First, I will defend a particular thesis regarding the syntax of these constructions, according to which those nominals are expressive pronouns. This means mere syntactic indexes feeding assignment functions for three types of semantic types. Individuals, recall the DP, propositions, recall the CPs, and predicates, recall the NPs. So the semantic connection between the expressive pronoun and the of DP, NP, CP is equation and not predication against basically all the mainstream approaches to this type of construction. Yeah. This is the first step. The first step is trying to get into details regarding this construction. And then the consequence of this is to propose an alternative to Corben, which I call syntactic recycling, which basically is the idea that there is a grammar of expressivity that requires syntactic manipulation. This connects directly with Corben's, which essentially consists of merging material in expletive position. This manipulation, I argue, creates a non-representational syntax. And syntactic recycling must not be confused with syntactic deviation. In other words, I will argue here that these constructions are not poetry, although as we already know, many poems require some type of syntactic deviation. Okay, so that's the idea. Defending a view, let's say, a more moderate view to syntactic deviation, which I call syntactic recycling. Okay, so The plan for the talk is first to talk a little about expressivity and predication. Then I will talk about the epithet construction, the binomial with the epithet. Then I will give you some background assumption. Then I will propose the particular equative syntax and semantics I propose. Then we are going to go to the other construction, depending on time. And finally, there are some conclusions and an appendix that I will not have time to present. Okay, let's go to the preliminaries. Okay. So let's start. Let's take it for granted the idea imposes that expressive words and epithets form a natural class of expression consisting basically in denoting function that take an issue denotation as argument and returning the denotation of such an argument plus a conventional implicature dimension. That is to say, I'm assuming here a p-dimensional semantics for this type of words. Right? So for instance, according to Potts, whenever you have expressions like Shayla's damn dog is in the coach or that bastard Chuck are relate, what you have is basically two types of function. Okay, a function that takes a property like damn as an argument and returns a implicature, a conventional implicature in the non-representational dimension of meaning. When it comes to bastard, you have an operator that takes an individual as inputs and give you as a denotation in a parallel dimension of meaning a proposition that the speaker is in certain emotional states with respect to the individual denoted by the proper name or the pronoun. Okay. That's important. Now, this is the important thing for this talk. A direct consequence of this view is stated by Potts as follows. He says the following. All predicates that appear in copular position must necessarily fail to be expressive because they provide no argument for the copular verb. This is the empirical motivation for this observation is basically given by example like this. You cannot say in English, Eduardo is dumb. You cannot say in Spanish, Eduardo es bendito, which is the equivalent in English. And the reason for this, according to Potts, is because of a classical semantic type mismatch. Dumb requires an argument of a given, the copula requires a property as an argument, and dumb does not denote the required property. Okay, that's the idea. Now, epithets do not fit the expectation in the same way. An epithet as bastard can indeed occur in predicative position, although it is easy to show that in that position it fails to be an expressive in Potts sense. And that is because when you say Andrés is a bastard, you have a meaning regarding bastard, and that meaning projects into the representational dimension of meaning. And clear evidence in favor of that is that when you say Andrés is not a bastard, you are really negating the property of being a bastard, right? So this means that bastard, the content of bastard, is affected by a logical operator that like negation or similar ones. Okay, perfect. So whatever the meaning of bastard is, it falls under the scope of negation. That's the point. But again, this means that you need an ambiguity theory for epithets and not for expressives like damn. Now, consider Spanish like el idiota de Juan tiene dinero. That idiot of Juan has money. The same in Portuguese, I think. So the question that is at the center of this talk is, does the epithet fail to be expressive when occurring in binomial construction? That's the crucial question. And according to the mainstream view on Romance binomial construction, it should be felt to be an expressive. And the reason is provided in this quotation from Den Dicken, which constitutes the mainstream approach to binomials in Romance and beyond Romance. What Den Dicken says about this type of construction? It says the following. At the outset of this exercise, let me point out that what unites all qualitative binomial noun phrases is that they are characterized by the fact that the first noun phrase ascribes a property to the noun phrase that follows it. On the assumption that property ascription, in general, is structurally represented in the form of a predication structure, with the ascriber of the property being the predicate and the ascribee the subject, this leads us to the postulation of a syntactic structure underlying all qualitative binominal constructions, according to which there is a predicational relationship between the two noun phrases. Okay, and this leads then Dickens to propose his very well-known racing predicate analysis, according to which, in a structure like El Idiota de Juan, what you have is Juan in a subject position, the relator idiot, as you see in 1A, and then Idiota moves over the subject, crossing the subject, whenever there is a particular functional phrase involving the structure. Okay, this is basically the mainstream approach you can find in authors like Español Echeverría, Villalba, González Rivera, and many others. Okay, so this is basically a theory that tells you that be of is the nominal counterpart of the verb to be. So it's a copula. Okay, it's a copula. And this is a point of a strong disagreement between the tradition, the mainstream approach, and my own position. Semantically speaking, that's important. Whenever an epithet occurs in the binominal scheme, the predicative force vanishes. And the point that shows you this is a brief comparison with slurs in predicative position. So you have sorry for mentioning this word, I need it. When you have Andrés is homosexual plus the pejorative dimension, or Anna is prostitute plus the pejorative dimension, you have two slur words, you can see clearly that the property homosexual or prostitute projects into the representational dimension. Now, when it comes to the binominal construction, when you say el P de Andrés or la P de Ana, there is no projection of representational meaning into the truth conditional dimension. When you say el P de Andrés, you are just insulting Andrés, okay, in a particular way. So there is a clear contrast, robust contrast between having a predicational force like in 1A and B and not having predicational force as in 2A and 2B, okay? So this is a clear problem for predicational theories of binominal constructions. You have more evidence in favor of this. Whenever you say Andrés es un animal, Andrés is an animal, you have two readings. Andrés is a living being, for instance, Andrés is a donkey. And a second reading, according to which Andrés is a stereotype of an animal. Okay. Now, when it comes to the binominal construction, and you say el animal de Andrés, the animal of Andrés, the predicational reading disappears. Okay, so el animal de Andrés can only mean that Andrés is a stereotype of animal. That's important. Okay, so we have this scheme. You have the preposition of, and we need some terminology that avoids the confusion with predicational structures. I will call the epithet. Basically, I take as an occurrence of a predicative word in a non-predicative position, which gives rise to a stereotype and to a related negative balance. Then we have the target of this epithet, which is the proper name of the referential expression. And then you have the formal link, okay, which is the preposition of, which is not a copula according to the view to be defended here. Okay. Some relevant questions we would like to answer are the following ones. How may any word become expressive in the relevant sense? Or put in another way, how did animal in the previous example lose its original predicative force and communicates a mere stereotype with an associated negative valence? What is the exact syntactic and semantic relation between the epithet and the target? And finally, what is the formal link for in the relevant set of constructions. Okay, so in order to answer these questions and use those answers for evaluating Corbert's proposal, let me just zoom in into the syntax of the type of construction we're interested in. So let's start with the first one, the one that has the epithet and the off-DP coda. This construction has a set of very, very funny properties. These are, first, they trigger many agreement concord mismatches, which is an indication that maybe Corbett is right. Second, the epithets always occurs preceding the DP. There is no predicate raising alternation. Third, NP ellipsis of the epithet is absolutely banned. Four, the preposition of contra Deacon's expectations forms a constituent with the DP. 5, the off phrase can remain implicit. Okay, let's go quickly on each of these properties. Agreement concord mismatches. This is one of the highlights of this construction. So you say stuff like el gallina de Juan dice que lo amenazaron. You can see here you have a chicken, which is a feminine singular noun, and then you see that the agreement with the article, there is no agreement, sorry, with the article. El is masculine, and even more, if you take a look to the clitic is masculine singular, like the article or Juan, mismatching with chicken. Okay. Second property, which is important, that there is no raising alternation. So, for those that believe that these binominals arise as the result of predicate inversion, with the predicate idiota crossing its subject, it's at least funny that there is no counterpart with subject rising. So you can say el idiota de Juan, but you cannot say el Juan de idiota, compared with true cases of predicate raising. No ames el lingüista es no. Third, and this is a very important observation made by my supervisor Jairo in my first trip to Brazil in 2004 during a conference. Jairo says in that conference in which I was talking about ellipses, look, Andrés, epithets cannot be candidates for nominal ellipses, and that's completely true. And this made my master thesis and part of my PhD thesis. So another occasion to say thank you to Jairo. Any attempt to delete the expressive noun give us ungrammatical results. So you cannot say that's Jairo's observation, el gallina de Juan y el de Pedro. That's totally out. Example that Jairo gave in that conference was u cachorro do João, u cachorro Hugo de Pedro, or something like that. That is the same. You cannot elide the epithet. If there is ambiguity like el burro de Juan, which is ambiguous between a possessive reading and a, let's say, predicative reading, the putative predicative reading disappear. So el burro de Juan y el de Pedro only means that Juan and Pedro have donkeys. Okay. This is property 4 is crucial. Preposition of forms a constituent with the DP against the expectation of the predication or analysis. So if you say, for instance, you can say in Spanish, not in Dutch, that's very interesting, los idiotas de Juan y de Pedro. Los idiotas de Juan y de Pedro. Classic constituent test. And this, you have also this beautiful one. If you say a fragment, like, for instance, something as el idiota de quién, with echo reading, you must answer de Juan. De Juan. You cannot answer Juan, which is what you can expect according to the predicational analysis, right? But that's very important. Here there are some slides complicating the picture a little bit, but I will skip them for time reasons, okay? Here there are some slides in which I really show that this cannot be easily accounted for in a Van Dickens type of approach. These ones, and let me go to directly to the 5 property. Implicit of DPs. As I said, a particular characteristic of this construction is that the the DP, the coda, the off coda can remain implicit. So you can say el gallina de Juan, but also el gallina, el idiota, el burro, el boludo, el hijo de puta, and so on and so on. This is going to be important later. So this is something that I try to show in those times in which Shairo made the observation. When trying to explain why these guys behave in the way they do in nominal ellipses, I came to the conclusion that epithets, when occur alone, are antilogophoric pronouns, which is an idea proposed first by Dubinsky and Hamilton in an LIS way. I will skip this part also. I will just try. You have to believe me that when you say el gallina or you say el burro or el perro, the epithet and the article is not a normal or regular nominal lexical nominal phrase, but is instead a type of strong pronoun. Okay, this is because, as you might know, when epithet was first analyzed by, for instance, Lasik in the 70s, he concluded that epithets behave as our expression in view of fact like this one. For instance, when you say Sean says that Sean is crazy, and you compare with the epithet, it seems that the epithet behaves as Sean and not as he. But this is misleading. This is the point that Dubinsky and Hamilton show. When you complicate the picture, empirically speaking, you can show that the idiot behaves like he regarding binding principles. Okay? And the type of examples that are relevant are these ones. Whenever you change the evaluation perspective, then you construct a principle C scenario, and you see that the epithet behaves as a pronoun and not as another expression. For instance, in something like Sean ran over a man who was trying to give the idiot direction, that's good, but if you put a proper noun instead, the construction is bad. Okay? The same if you say something like, speaking of Sean, the idiot, blah, blah, blah. But you cannot say something like, according to Sean, he, blah, blah, blah. That's totally out. Because there is a coincidence between the evaluation point and the content of the epithet. Okay? Okay, the same in Spanish. So some preliminary observations you should keep in mind are the following ones. The agreement-concord property and the ellipsis fact, Shairo's observation, show that the epithet is not the head of the construction. This is safe to conclude. Given the particular distribution of the off-DP phrase, one is tempted to believe that the n inside the DP is the true head of the entire construction. Yet, of course, there is this annoying preposition de, which makes the hypothesis prima facie hard to accept. Property 4, regarding the putative copula, shows that this preposition of cannot be a copular element, contradicting and others. Its function in the phrase must be related to the formal licensing of the second DP, for instance, to case. And finally, observation 3, the property on implicit DPs and the pronominal nature of epithets open the analytical space and forces to seriously considering that the true head of the construction must be looked for in the internal syntax of pronouns. Recall the idea that epithets are pronouns. So let's go to the analysis, starting first with some background assumptions. I will, as I said to the starting point of this talk, I assume a bidimensional semantics for slurs or expressive in general, which is an idea that has its roots in Kaplan's theory of exclamatories. Basically, the idea is that when it comes to evaluate the semantic contribution of epithets, what you have is an operator, the epithet, that takes, for instance, an individual as argument, Andrés in this case, and basically does the following. It gives you Andrés, it copies the denotation of Andrés in the truth conditional dimension of minutes, and after the bullet, as you can see the black bullet, it gives you a proposition which is non-representational. It's a proposition which tell you something about the state of the speaker with respect to this individual. For instance, that the speaker hates Andrés or has a problem with Andrés or whatever. That's the simplified version of the semantic I am assuming. The bidimensionality of the semantic is represented with the metalogical operator bullet. Okay, that's the idea, the basic idea you have to have in mind. When it comes to the real predicates, true predicates, you have something like what is called a mixed term. This term makes the following. Now, it takes Andrés, when you say Andrés is P, it gives you the predication of Andrés is homosexual without the pejorative content, and give you the pejorative content in another dimension of meaning. Okay, that's the idea. If you compare this with the previous one, what you see here is that in the case of the epithet, there is no representational meaning. For instance, here, Andrés is not classified into the set of homosexuals. That's the idea. Okay. And recall, all predicates, according to Post, all predicates that appear in copular position must necessarily fail to be expressive because they provide no argument for the copular verb. Of course, after McGrady, what we mean with this idea is basically the following. All predicates that appear in copular position must have predicative force at the truth conditional level, regardless of the question whether other ornamental meanings at the expressivity mentioned are at play or not. Okay, that's important. Then again, when you compare 1 and 2, you see that when animal or put homosexual appear in predicative position, you have a mixed term. Andrés un animal has a mixed nature. When it appears, it occurs in epithet position, the predicative force vanishes. What this shows is that the epithet is an expressive tense in both sense. Okay? So the conclusion is of is not a copula. Of is not a copula against the tradition. Now, this is the first component, the first ingredient of this analysis, the bidimensional semantics of these terms. Now, we have to assume some ideas, basic idea about pronouns. And this is very standard. This is a pronoun according to me and according to big part of the field. The idea is that a pronoun is an index with a set of functional projection, which basically give you presupposition of gender, female, male, number presuppositions, or person presupposition. Okay, this is basically Heyman-Kratzer basic approach to pronouns. So that's all. Okay. And for a pronoun like she, you have this syntax, which is basic syntax. We can go fast on this, and then you have a basic semantics, which is basically this one. When you have the index 3, if the index is associated to the value Anna, you are going to get Anna at the top of the tree whenever all the presuppositions are satisfied. Okay, this is a problem. Okay, then here's the answer to that give a sort of solution to all the property we have said. The thesis is that the epithets, as I said, are expressive pronouns merged in the high functional layer of a given pronominal expression. They are part of the syntax of strong pronouns. Okay, so when you say el idiota, you have a pronoun, okay, plus the epithet merged in expletive position. This is a non-representational position, as you can see. Okay. The semantic thesis is that in such a syntactic position, epithets have no predicative force at the truth conditional level. They only denote a stereotype in an expressive dimension of meaning. I will skip the complication of the formulaic stuff, and let's zoom into the syntax. Because the obvious next question is now, how is the off phrase connected to this tree? Okay? This is the tree for the idiot. How we connect this tree with the off phrase? And the answer is, against the predicational analysis, we connect this coda through an equative syntax and semantic. And this means concretely that there is a head, which I call equative phrase, which basically establish an equative relation between Juan and the pronoun, as you can see in the red part of this tree. So when you say el idiota de Juan, you have an equative phrase that connects Juan and the index through a presupposition of identity, which is basically this one. This head takes two individuals, Juan and the index, and give you the index whenever the presupposition of identity, of equation, is satisfied. This is what the formula says. Okay? So this is the tree. Okay? It doesn't matter. I don't care the semantics for now. Basically, this analysis responds the puzzles or the properties or whatever that we saw before. Recall the properties of the construction. It triggers an agreement. There is never predicate raising alternation. You cannot elide the epithet. The preposition of forms a constituent with the DP, and the of phrase can remain implicit. The most important property for the aims of this talk is the following: is agreement and concur mismatches. Why? Well, because according to Korber, this will be a case of syntactic deviation raised in expressivity. But according to my analysis, this is not syntactic deviation. Similar to what Ana Maria said during her talk, there is no an agreement here. There is just regular agreement. There is an illusion of an agreement, because basically idiota or gallina is not in the head position to control agreement. So the object that control agreement is the index, which is masculine. Okay? And we don't have the problem of having Juan controlling agreement, because Juan is a PP and we want that stays a PP, regardless of being an empty PP, of course. That's important. So there is no syntactic deviation. This construction is well behaved regarding the rules of grammar. Okay? Well, why we don't have predicate raising alternation? Because there is never a predicated structure to begin with, right? So there is no expectation of having raising alternation. Ellipsis ban. Well, this follows because according to previous work by me and other people, NP ellipsis is ellipsis of the lower layer of the DPs. So you cannot delete epithets just because they are not in the right position to be deleted. The preposition of is not a copula, it forms a constituent with the DP. And this follows if the is a inherent or something, a dummy preposition inserted at PF in order to license Juan, as is a standard, at least or I think it was a standard in the 80s, okay? And finally, we have the implicit property. This follows naturally from the proposal that these guys are really pronouns, true pronouns. So nothing to add here. There is some super interesting evidence in favor of this coming from other Romance languages like Italian or French. Recall that I proposed that there is a null n. Maybe you know that, or maybe you don't. But Romance languages are divided in two types regarding how they license empty nouns. For instance, Italian license empty noun only with a strong determinant, like quello. Quello idiota di Gianni is okay. L'idiota di Gianni, not okay. Okay? This is an epithet. Well, that's super interesting, and this requires an account. This is accounted under this theory because of the following reason. In Italian, empty nouns require strong demonstratives. So if you want to say la de Juan in Italian, you cannot say la de Juan, la di Gianni. You have to say quella di Gianni. Okay, so this is a good evidence that empty nouns or elided nouns require strong determinants. If this is correct, the infelicity of l'idiota di Gianni is accounted for because idiota contains an empty noun. An empty noun requires strong demonstrative. Well, idiota diciamo. So far, so good. So the correct generalization seems to be what forced the use of a strong determinants in this entire set of examples in Italian is the syntactically active presence of a silent or elliptical no, which in the case of epithet is instantiated by a formal index. Okay, that's the analysis which extends to the other binomial construction with some adjustment. I will not go into the details. I only want to highlight the fact that in this type of construction, like the expressive of MP or expressive of CP, there is the same equative syntax that we saw, the same equative syntax, with a difference in the type of equation. For instance, consider this one. Esta mierda de departamento. This sheet of apartment. The properties that the construction has is very similar to the properties we saw with epithet. Let me skip this. And let me go to the structure. I want to highlight the structure. I will assume that empty nouns can be indexes for individuals, like in the left tree, or indexes for properties, like in the tree at the right. And when you see here, and what we see in the tree of the left, at the left, is that we have an equative phrase, as in the previous case, with a crucial difference. This is an equation between properties, not an equation between individuals. And that's account the category restriction of the construction. This is a really important property of the construction. It has to be a ver NP. So you have the apartment denoting a property, and then you have an index for a property. Okay, that's the idea. Then we have some other action going on, but it doesn't matter now. Okay, what I want to highlight here is just the equation. So we have an equative head here, which basically introduces an equation for properties. If the presupposition is satisfied, then what you get is the index for properties. And this is the semantic tree. It doesn't matter. This also accounts for the same facts that we saw before. These constructions are also construction triggering an agreement, but again, against Corbett, this an agreement is not because deviation of syntax, but because of the particular syntax this construction has. The ellipsis band follows in the same way, the restriction of onto ellipsis in the same way, and the fact that you can use this construction without the coda follows also in the same way. You have a pronoun for properties, okay? And the same with the corresponding attachment with the neuter demonstrative of CP construction, which then Deacon and others do not analyze. This is a beautiful one. Eso de que Ana venga otra vez no me sorprende. That thing that Ana comes again does not surprise me. But it's very common to have emotives here, like that bullshit of that Andrés sings well. Esa boludez de que Andrés canta bien. Ese hijaputés, I don't know how to translate this. Hijaputés comes from hijo de puta, and this is the abstract noun. Ese hijaputés de denunciar maestros, etc., etc. And we have similar properties with a crucial exception, which I will not discuss here, which is this construction does not allow an agreement, as you can see here. Unlike the two previous cases, it does not allow for an agreement. The rest is basically the same. I want to just highlight the tree. And the tree is this one. Here. You have again the same construction. You have the equative phrase, and now the equative phrase introduces equation between proposition, which basically connects, connects the CP que Ana baile with the index for proposition. Okay? So the analysis is straightforward. So concluding the analysis, here's the tree. We have a summary which says basically that a set of equative construction in the nominal domain certificate that there are in the three types of nominal indexical distinguished by their denotational domain. We have equation for individuals, el idiota de Juan. We have equation for properties, una mierda de departamento. And we have equation for proposition, esa estupidez de que Andrés canta bien. Okay? All these equals are introduced by an equative head. What we have with respect to ellipses, constituents test, and agreement facts is just regular syntax. Okay. So in conclusion, recall the first question: how may any word become expressive in the relevant sense, or how did animal in Animal de Andrés lose its original predicative force and communicates a mere stereotype with an associated negative valence? Well, this is syntactic recycling. Syntax provides different mark positions. This is basic, some of which are predicative and some of which are not. Syntax also provides expletive position, as we know. A subset of lexical items with predicative force are also licensed in expletive position. Now, to the extent that those items also denote in an expressive dimension of meaning, we say that in expletive position, the truth conditional dimension is lost, and only the expressive dimension survives. Of course, the best candidate to occur in expletive position are a subset of already expressive words, for which the expressive dimension is constantly salient. The idea of syntactic manipulation, now this is the point I want to highlight, is different from Colbert's thesis that the expression of emotion in language requires syntactic deviation, the generation of deviant structure affecting the appraisal system. According to Colbert, this will explain some funny properties of Dutch expressive, for instance, the use of the so-called spurious indefinite, like in one, dieters, van, and jongens, when you have boys in plural and you have the article ein. One could be tempted to explain the agreement facts of phenomenal in Spanish also as a case of syntactic deviation, as I said. However, I provide reasons to think that there is no syntactic deviation at all. Syntax just proceeds generating a structure by means of merge in different syntactic positions, some of which, as I said, are non-representational. One keeps wondering whether cases like the spurious indefinite in Dutch cannot be reduced to this type of syntactic manipulation. There is a possibility, for instance, that ein is not an spurious determiner after all, but part of the extended projection of an MP noun. This connects to Bruna's Pereira's talk when she talked about Kane approach to syntactic silent nouns. So, for instance, we have a few books in which we have books, which is plural, but A is indefinite. And as Bruna said, books, in this case, there is a possibility that the article is modifying a silent noun. So why not to extend this analysis to Dutch? Okay, this is a good project for future research. Okay. Second, what is the exact syntactic and semantic relation between the epithet expressive and the target? Well, equation, as we saw. The difference among the three constructions is the coda, the index, and the relation with the coda. A DP when the equation is for individual, an NP when the equation is for properties, and a CP when the equation is for properties. Okay? And finally, I try to show you that the preposition of the is not a copula. Then what is the formal link for in the relevant set of construction? Not a copula, but a case marker. The preposition de is a mere case marker, not a copula. Essentially, they are assigned to nominals in, say, the NP domain. This is consistent with the distribution of the off phrase in binomial construction. At any rate, the relevant implication is that, again, there is no true subject predicate syntax involved here. Okay? And muito obrigado. And that's all what I have to say. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Andrés, por tu charla. Bueno, aquí en el chat empezó una discusión de fútbol muy linda. Bueno, se alguém quiser fazer comentários e perguntas, e está aqui, né, aberta o espaço para os colegas comentarem. E também tem declaração de amor, porque o nosso grupo, assim, é um grupo que tem muitos casais, né? Assim, muitos casais.
Quiero ver las declaraciones de amor.
Tem aqui a pergunta.
Eu vou aprender. Ok. Andrés, ¿no hay diferencia en relación con los trazos de definitud, especificidad de sus nombres? Sí. Es muy buena esta pregunta. Hay una diferencia muy importante. Sorry, in English. If I understood the question, which I think is very important, the construction with the epithet is always definite, right? Like el idiota de Andrés. But when it comes to the property equation, then you have a spurious article, like a fake indefinite. That's very important. This is very important, and this was taken in the literature as evidence for agreement in definitude or definiteness or what. I don't think so. I think that the fact that the individual construction is always definite has to do with the fact that the construction, I didn't say this very clearly during the talk, but the equation is a presupposition. So when you say el idiota de Juan, Juan is backgrounded, okay? Juan is backgrounded. El idiota de mi marido, for instance, mi marido is backgrounded, okay? This requires, if it is backgrounded, that the expression be definite. Not something. There is a band that the Dick and others that not explain that has to be with the band of having a pronoun following the de. You cannot say el idiota de él, right? You cannot say el idiota de mí tampoco, okay? So this follows because strong pronouns introduce new information, are not backgrounded, as Andrés is in el idiota de Andrés. So I think that the fact that these are always definite is related to this property of being backgrounded. Now, what is, a backgrounded property? Like when you say una mierda de departamento, what it means to be backgrounded? Do I need the definite article for backgrounded properties? No, I don't think so. It's more difficult to get backgrounding properties, right? The only way to get backgrounded properties is having really salient context, in which we are talking about the apartments or whatever. So I think that the difference between being definite or being spurious indefinite has to be with the notion of backgrounding. I don't know, Marcelo, if I more or less answered your question. I think that's a very good one. Another possibility is that I'm wrong, of course. This is always a possibility in my life. And then properties are not backgrounded, and then you use indefinite there. I don't know. I have to explain this contrast. Very good question. Thank you.
Mais perguntas, mais comentários, quem está assistindo? Bom, se ninguém mais vai perguntar, a gente vai... Cristina colocou um comentário.
Yeah. Well, yeah. This is just an assumption of the analysis, because the only thing I really show is the negative part, that is not a copula, right? Then the only solution I got was the idea of this is not a case marker. But then, of course, there are other possibilities. I'm happy with all them to the extent you avoid the copula assumption, because I'm totally convinced that it's not a copula, at least in Spanish. Because when it comes to the constituent test, I check in Dutch, and they are different from Spanish. So maybe fan is a copula in Dutch, but it's not in Spanish or Romance, right? So I'm against here, not against the general view of taking some van preposition as copulas, but with the assimilation between Romance and Germanic. I don't have the oh, I see. I don't have the idea. I don't know what is an antinominal, but you mean something like you need a distinction mark, right? The idea of distinctiveness, something like that, right? You have two nominals too close, and then you need to make a difference. Yeah, that could be an option, if I understood what is an antinominal. Inserting something in order to distinguish nominals in a given phase domain, for instance. Thanks, Cristina. Very nice.
Ok, Andrés, muchísimas gracias por tu presentación. Un gusto ver e dialogar contigo e ver os comentários. Eu coloquei no chat aqui o link da próxima apresentação. A Juliana está perguntando se a fala do Maurício vai ser hoje. Ele confirmou, não, vai ser amanhã pela manhã, tá? Tinha uma vaga amanhã pela manhã, às 8, então ele vai falar amanhã pela manhã, ok? A próxima sessão de comunicação é agora às 7 horas da noite. O link está aqui já no chat. Então, a gente tem um pequeno intervalo agora de 6 até as 7 horas para as próximas comunicações. Obrigado mais uma vez, gente. Obrigado. Muitíssimas graças, André. Até logo. Até às 7.